What was meant to be a simple Tet shopping trip turns into a tense public moment. Linda is pregnant, overwhelmed, and one careless encounter in a crowded supermarket pushes her emotions to the limit, forcing Quang to stand up for his family. Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we explore a quiet but powerful chapter in Linda and Quang's life, where love, patience, and responsibility are tested during a traditional Vietnamese Tet. If this story touches you, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next episodes. Morning came in clean and bright, the kind of light that made the kitchen feel newly painted. Linda stood by the window in a loose cardigan, one hand resting on her belly, as she watched a neighbor carry a small kumquat tree downstairs. Tet was close enough that the whole building seemed to be moving with purpose. Boxes, bags, the faint rustle of red paper. Quang moved around behind her, quiet but attentive. He wasn't in a suit today. He wore a soft sweater, sleeves pushed up, and he handled breakfast like it mattered. Warm porridge, sliced fruit, ginger tea. When Linda reached for the tea jar, he twisted the lid open and set it down where she could grab it without stretching. "I can do it," she said. "I know," he replied. "I'm just faster." She turned, eyes narrowing with tired humor. "You're faster at worrying." He smiled, relieved by the sound of her voice. That too. They ate at the table with a list between them. Quang had written it neatly with little boxes, decorations, groceries, flowers. Linda traced the word decorations and then tapped the margin. "No dark colors," she said. "I want the house bright this year." "Bright," Quang agreed, and he meant more than paper and lights. Outside, the street was already busy. Scooters slid past with bags hooked on handlebars. Linda wrapped a red scarf around her neck, adjusted it carefully, then looked at Quang like she was setting a boundary. "No hovering." "I don't hover," he said automatically. Her eyebrow lifted. He exhaled. "Fine, I hover a normal amount." They stopped at a small market first, just long enough to pick up red tassels and a set of simple lanterns. Linda held one lantern up, listening to its soft rattle, and her voice dropped. "Our baby will see these." Quang's throat tightened. "Yeah," he said. "They will." Then came the supermarket. The parking lot was packed, and Quang ended up far from the entrance. He matched his pace to Linda's. When he reached for her elbow over a cracked patch of pavement, she shifted slightly away, not angry, just determined. Inside, the noise hit them like a wall. Carts, voices, children tugging at sleeves, the faint, tinny sound of Tet music overhead. Towers of mandarins and pomelos formed bright pyramids. Cakes sat under glass, iced in red. Linda's breath shortened for a moment. Quang noticed and steered their cart along the edge of the aisle where there was more space. "I'm fine," Linda said before he could ask. "I didn't say anything." "You were thinking it," she replied, then softened. "Just stay close." They started with produce. Linda chose fruit carefully, turning each piece in her hand. Quang held the bag open and let her set the pace. At the Tet ingredients aisle, she scanned shelves and named what they needed. Mung beans, sticky rice, dried mushrooms. When she reached for candied ginger, Quang lifted his hands in surrender. "Doctor approved." She gave him a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. They moved into the home section for lights and trays. Linda spotted a box of fairy lights on a higher shelf and stepped closer. "Linda," Quang began, already shifting toward her. "I've got it," she said, stretching just a little. A metal stocking cart rattled behind them. Someone pushed it through the narrow aisle without slowing. The cart brushed Linda's elbow, nothing brutal, just sudden. Her hand slipped. The box tipped forward. Quang caught it before it hit the floor. He turned, body angling instinctively between Linda and the cart. A young employee in a uniform polo kept a hand on the cart, eyes already on the next shelf. "Excuse me," they muttered, flat. Linda froze. Her other hand went to her belly without thinking. Quang felt something harden in him. "You hit her," he said, controlled. "It's crowded," the employee replied. "People need to move." Linda took a breath, the kind she used when she didn't want to cry in public. "You could slow down," she said softly. "That's all." The employee's gaze flicked over Linda's belly and away. "I'm working," they said, impatience plain. "If you don't like it, shop somewhere else." Quang's voice sharpened before he could stop it. "We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking you to be careful." A woman nearby paused with a pack of cookies in her hand, watching. Someone's cart squeaked as it rolled past. The music overhead kept playing, cheerful and oblivious. The employee shrugged. "I said, excuse me." Linda's eyes flashed. "That doesn't erase what you did." Quang turned to Linda, checking her face. She looked pale now, not dramatic, just drained in a way that made his stomach drop. Her fingers tightened on the cart handle. "Are you dizzy?" he asked, low. Linda swallowed. She tried to nod like it was nothing, but her eyes betrayed her. Quang didn't argue anymore. Winning didn't matter. He guided the cart away from the aisle toward a quieter corner near a display of paper towels. A manager in a darker uniform appeared a few steps behind, drawn by the raised voices. "Sir, what's the issue?" the manager asked. Quang leaned close to Linda first, voice gentle and practical. "Breathe with me. In, out." Linda followed his lead, shoulders rising and falling. Her grip loosened slowly. The anger in her face faded into something more vulnerable, the kind she only showed when she was exhausted. "I hate this," she whispered, staring at the floor tiles. "I hate feeling like I'm making everything harder." Quang covered her hand with his on the cart handle. "You're not," he said. "The crowd is loud, people are careless. That's not you." Linda's eyes lifted to his, shiny but controlled. "I was rude." "You were scared," Quang corrected softly. "And you're allowed to be." He looked up at the manager, tone even. "An employee pushed a cart too fast and bumped my wife," he said. "She's pregnant. She got dizzy. We're stepping aside." The manager's expression softened. "Do you need water? A chair?" Linda shook her head. "I'm okay," she said, and this time it sounded closer to true. Quang squeezed her hand. "We can go home," he murmured. "We have enough." Linda hesitated, pride fighting fatigue. Then she exhaled, shoulders dropping. "Okay," she whispered, leaning a fraction closer to him, accepting the support without feeling like she'd lost. Quang kept one hand on the cart as they threaded back through the crowded aisles, moving slower than the rush around them. Linda walked beside him, her palm resting lightly over her belly, as if the touch could steady everything inside her. He didn't rush her or ask questions. He watched her breathing, the color in her cheeks, the set of her mouth. At the checkout, he put only the essentials on the belt: fruit, ginger tea, plain crackers, and 2 small red envelopes Linda had grabbed earlier. The cashier smiled and wished them an early, happy Tet. Linda nodded, polite but distant. Outside, sunlight hit them clean and warm. Quang opened the car door for her and waited until she was seated before he got behind the wheel. He didn't turn the radio on. Halfway home, Linda spoke without looking at him. "I shouldn't have said anything." Quang kept his eyes on the road. "You shouldn't have been bumped." "That's not what I mean." She watched the streets fill with flower stalls and red banners. "I hate that I'm reactive." "You're pregnant," he said gently. "Your body is busy." She let out a tight breath. So now I can blame everything on the baby? You can blame the dizziness on the baby, he replied. The part where you tried to be respectful, that's you. Linda's fingers twisted her scarf. I felt exposed. Quang reached over and touched her knee, steady and brief. You don't have to win in public, he said. You just have to be okay. When they reached home, Quang carried the bags himself. Linda didn't argue. Inside, the apartment felt bright and clean, the kind of calm that made noise from outside seem far away. Sit, he said, nodding at the couch. Linda lowered herself carefully and gave him a look that mixed gratitude and irritation. You're hovering. I hover a normal amount, he said, and she almost smiled. He brought water and a cracker, then sat close enough to read her face. Any pain? No, she said, just tired. Quang nodded, accepting it like a fact. Okay, we keep today simple. Linda stared at the small bags on the counter. I wanted this day. I wanted us to do Tet right. We are, he said. Doing it right means you're safe. Her eyes shone and she looked away, embarrassed. Quang didn't force her to talk. He stayed beside her, shoulder to shoulder until her breathing slowed. After a few minutes, she asked, Can we still decorate? Just at home? Quang's expression softened. Yes. We'll make it ours. He pulled their decoration box from the closet. String lights, red tassels, a couple of paper lanterns, and a roll of ribbon. Linda leaned forward, interest returning. She held up a lantern and listened to its soft rattle. Bright, she said. No dark colors. I remember, Quang replied. They worked slowly. Quang used a step stool to hang the lanterns along the window frame while Linda handed him tape. When he reached too far, she warned, Careful. He paused and grinned. So you can worry, but I can't. I worry because you act like you're indestructible, she said. And you act like you're alone, he answered quietly, not accusing. Linda's hands paused. She swallowed. I don't mean to. I know, he said, stepping down, but I see it. They moved to the table. Linda arranged the fruit in a bowl with calm, deliberate care. Quang set the red envelopes beside it. For family, he said. And for us, a little luck. We need patience, Linda murmured. Luck can sit there and look pretty, Quang said, and she laughed. Small, real. He started ginger tea, the scent filling the kitchen. When he set a warm cup in front of her, Linda stared at the steam and spoke as if she'd been holding the words all day. I felt everyone looking at me, she said, like I was making a scene. People look at anything that interrupts their shopping, Quang replied. Tomorrow they'll forget. I won't, Linda whispered. Her gaze dropped to her belly. What if I'm not good at this? What if I'm too sensitive, too tired, too much? Quang reached across the table and held her hand, thumb rubbing a slow circle over her knuckle. You're already doing it, he said. Doing what? Loving someone you haven't met, he answered. Trying to protect them, even when you're scared. Linda blinked quickly. I don't want to become a burden. Quang's face tightened with a quiet ache. He came around the table and crouched beside her chair. Linda, he said steadily, you're not a burden. You're my wife. You're carrying our child. If anyone gets to carry weight, it's me. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it fast, annoyed at herself. Quang rested his forehead lightly against her shoulder. I'm not asking you to be strong all the time, he murmured. I'm asking you to let me be here. Her hand moved to the back of his head, fingers threading through his hair. I'm trying, she whispered. I can see that, he said. They finished decorating in short bursts with rests that weren't announced. Quang hung the lights along the hallway. Linda adjusted the tassels on the wall, then sat again, listening to the faint sounds of neighbors in the corridor. Bags, laughter, someone practicing a song. When Quang turned on the string lights, the room softened into warm reds and gentle golds. Linda's eyes widened, pleased despite everything. "It feels like Tet," she said. "It feels like home," Quang replied. They settled on the couch, Linda tucked under a light blanket, Quang's arm around her shoulders. The outside world stayed busy, but inside was quiet and safe. Linda took Quang's hand and placed it on her belly. He followed her lead, palm flat, still. After a moment, he felt a faint flutter, so small he almost doubted it. He looked at her, stunned. Linda's eyes were wet, but she was smiling. "Did you feel that?" Quang swallowed, his voice rough. "Yeah," he said, "I did." Linda leaned her head against his shoulder. Quang stayed still, as if any movement might scare the moment away. The lights reflected softly in the window, bright and steady, and Linda's breathing finally matched his.
Linda theo bà và cậu cháu ra nương mía. Dưới nắng sớm, bà vừa chặt mía vừa kể chuyện ngày xưa. Dậy chặt 3 hoặc 4 khúc cho đẹp để bán được giá. Đồng mía cao dần, 45 đồng trở thành hy vọng cho phiên chợ. Một cây mía đổ bất ngờ khiến cả nhóm kêu, rồi cười xòa vì kịp đỡ nhau. Chiều xuống, Linda buồn bã vì con rúi của mình đã biến mất. Nghi có kẻ trộm rình quanh nhà. CEO Quang ghé đến lắng nghe và trấn an và tự sửa chiếc camera cũ trong kho, kéo dây lắp trước sân nhà để bảo vệ cô. Đêm đến, Linda nấu cơm nếp cẩm mời anh ở lại ăn. Hai người trò chuyện lòng ấm lại. Quang kể áp lực công ty, camera nháy sáng, bóng lạ thoáng qua, và không biết Linda có sống sót qua được đêm nay không. Mọi người nếu thấy video hay, hãy cho mình một like, một subscribe. Cảm ơn mọi người nhé.